So to get into Howard the Duck, you played
Yes,
Bender, and this is
Bender.
one of the first humans that Howard encounters. In
Yeah,
fact, he's thrust upon you by the goons in the alley
by
as
the
the night.
yes,
Come back here with my date, or that what
yes.
is it?
Yeah.
That's
Wait,
my
that's
date.
my date.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my date. Yeah.
So what we've heard that actually, well, we've heard you actually mentioned that this was that it was a strange experience.
It
Can you tell me
was.
what's strange about it?
Okay, so in my particular case, as you see in the movie, I go from an exterior shot to an interior shot. And the exterior was shot, I believe, in November. And it was shot in the South of Market neighborhood of San Francisco, which at the time was just warehouses and rundown buildings and light industry. Now South of Market in San Francisco is like jumping. But at the time, it was just this alley. So the idea was they were shooting the exterior there in November, and then they would shoot the exterior of me getting thrust upon by the goons, have Howard being shoved into me, and I would go through the door, and then the interior was going to be shot later, possibly even a couple months later, which was fine. So we do that shot in November, and it all goes well, and then they say, okay, great, and we'll give you a call for the interior shot, which is going to be whenever. And the interior was shot at the Mabuhay Gardens, which is a very famous punk club in San Francisco. The Mabuhay Gardens was where all the major punk acts played, whether they were coming in from out of town or the San Francisco punk acts like the Dead Kennedys and the Avengers and Humans, and then of course all the other punk acts would come through there. So that's where they were shooting it. So by the time the interior shot comes around, the production is kind of, as near as I can tell, like not really in control much anyway. It's not going smoothly. And my agent would call me up and say, okay, they want you this day. And I'd go, great. And I'd block it out. And then he'd give me a call the next day. No, they want to cut you. Then no, they're not going to do it. They're going to do it this other day. And I'd say, okay. And then they'd say, okay, well, they're not doing it that day. They're doing it this day. And I go, okay. Now, he did the one thing. This was brilliant as an agent, because as an actor, if you're booked, the idea is you block out that day and you do not accept any other work that day.
Mm-hmm.
So you're supposed to be paid for that day in a sliding scale. Like if it's several months out and you get dropped, I think you get, but like this was like, they want you 2 days from now. Oh, they're canceling you. Theoretically, I'm supposed to be paid. So what my agent did is he said, you can't keep doing this to my client. You have to book him for 2 weeks. And they went, okay. And so for 2 weeks, I was hired. And all I had to do was phone up and go, am I coming in today? And they'd go, no. Great, I get paid.
Nice.
I phone up the next day. Am I coming in today? No, we're going to have you, but now we can't. You don't have to show up. Okay, great. Boom. Then they finally say, yeah, come in. So cool. So I come in. And I remember this vividly. I go into the Mabuhay, and as I walk in, Gloria Katz is coming out. She's walking out, and she has this expression on her face like her life is a wool sweater being slowly unraveled by some nail behind her. She's just like walking through, and she kind of gives me this glance and hustles by. I'm like, all right. So I go in and I look over, and to my left, in front of me, probably about 20 feet, there is George Lucas, and I'm guessing the cinematographer or a lighting director, somebody, because George was only like, and you guys would know this better than I do. He was executive producing. He wasn't really supposed to be hands-on with this. This was Willard. This was Willard and Gloria's deal. And so he's on set, and he's he's talking to some light. Like I said, I don't know who it was, but they're standing there, and George, like, he's, and then this other guy's like, okay, well, they're obviously talking about setting up the shot and then what to do next and whatever. Over to my left, their right, Willard is standing, and he's probably 10 feet away, and he's just standing looking. And as George and this guy, they're talking, what about this? Willard says something. He's where he's standing. He like says something. And George turns and just gives him this look of death, like I have never seen before. Just stares at him. Willard stands there, and then George turns back to this guy, and they start talking, and then things continue. It was very obviously
Jedi mind triggers.
There was clearly tension on the set at this point.
Wow.
Yeah, but I remember that distinctly. Was like this. It was kind of, the look of like, I should not be here. What's going on?
It must have been a whirlwind for you to have that where you see the beginning of the production, you go away and you come back, and then like, what happened while I was gone?
Exactly. What the heck happened over the course of a couple of months? Like, how did things get and you guys did a bunch of research, there was lots of, lots of problems with various things. So anyway, but then so now I'm doing the second part where I am being thrust into the club. And so the idea is that they've thrust Howard into my hands, and I run into the club, and then somebody steals Howard from me, and then more wackiness ensues. He goes all kinds of other places. He gets handed off a lot. I wore my own clothes. I wore my own clothes, and they were like, "Oh, this is great." So what you see me wearing is my stuff.
That was your suit.
That was my suit.
I was gonna compliment the suit. That was a brave choice. I mean,
yeah.
So I guess it was the only.
Yeah. That was my suit. But what you didn't see was I had these big, weird, they weren't platform shoes, but they were shoes with heels about this big. And the front of them had these very weird, sort of bulbous triangle patches on them. They were really cool shoes, especially for that time. But the thing is that you never really saw them, but the costume person really loved them. So my shot, I'm getting Howard, I am being thrust backwards and while holding Howard, and then he gets handed off. Well, there's all these cables lying around. There's all and so we do a rehearsal, and I'm stumbling over my heels. And I say to the costume person, I said, is there any way we can do this without the shoes? Because there's all these cables around, and I'm a little concerned. And and she goes, no, you got to keep the shoes for continuity. And I said, well, nobody sees the shoes. He goes, just keep them. I was like, okay. So anyway, so we do this take, and they thrust. Now, as you know, Howard is a human in a duck suit, right?
I was going to ask if you got
wall shoes about to happen.
If you got a doll thrown at you or an actual
no. It was a little person in a duck suit. And so we do a couple of takes, and and we're like, like, are you okay? Because I have to grab him, and then he gets handed off. So we want to make sure he's okay, right? Because he's Howard, for one thing. He's freaking Howard the Duck. So, we do a couple takes, and a couple rehearsals, and, I'm like, how are you? And he's like, oh, everything's good. And I'm like, okay. So we do a take, and they thrust Howard into my hands, and I'm being pushed backwards, and I trip over one of the cables. And my first thought is save the duck. And I'm falling backwards, and I'm hoping I'm going to land on my butt, but I'm also like, I've got to cushion Howard. And as I'm falling backwards, I look through the mouth of the costume, and I see these huge, terrified eyes staring at me as I'm falling backwards. And it's like, and so I managed to fall really well. I cushion him. He doesn't hit anything. He's okay. And when I hit the ground, these crew members come running over, and they grab Howard, and they go, "Are you okay? You okay? You okay?" And they just leave me lying there. And I'm like, I'm okay, you know. And I get up, and then we finally did it, and it
Here comes the makeup artist. I think you should take those shoes off. Yeah, the makeup artist. I think you should take those shoes off.
So anyway, so that was my experience, and you know, it was big. It was really actually a big fun. It was really big fun and quite strange. So yeah.
Oh, so let me ask you this then. Adversely, what was it like when you actually saw it for the first time? What was your honest opinion when you saw it?
There were parts I liked, but it did not capture the spirit of the comic book, because the comic book, you know, as you know, Howard is very acerbic, and he's just dealing with stuff. As the theme goes, he's trapped in a world he never made. So he's just dealing. Mm-hmm. He's a little fluffier. He's a little friendlier. He also, you know, he looked, you know, the roundness was a little too cute. There was something about the comic book version where his head's kind of a little more oblong. Mm-hmm. You know, so I was kind of disappointed by the movie. I thought it was fun. I thought it was weird. But I didn't think it completely captured the spirit of the book, the comic book, the source material. So.
Yeah, I think we went into it with the benefit of not comparing it to not having to compare it to the comic, because the movie was our first impression of Howard the Duck. Like, and then it was jarring for me to see the illustrations of him in the comic. I'm like, that's not like
right.
Howard. You mentioned a little bit like the interaction with Willard Hayek. What was it like working with him? Just in general,
what I remember is it was very simple. I mean, my scene is very simple. You know, I get the duck and I walk back. So, I mean, we didn't have a lot of interaction. There wasn't a lot of, you know, like, you know, what I had to do. So that was fine. I mean, it was perfectly fine. Like once he got, you know, hands on, you know, he seemed to be okay. Seemed to be fine. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, well, yeah.
The residual checks. We're always. I'm in a group on. I like that laugh. That kind of tells me. So I'm in a group on Facebook called Cruise Stories, and I think it's funny. A lot of the times people on there post pictures of their residual checks for like 0.001.
Yeah.
It costs more to print this thing than it did.
Yes.
We talked to a lot of actors that did like what one of our guests called Where's Waldo parts in movies, and so it's always it's just like a curiosity of ours what those residual checks look like, and you don't have to be specific, but just curious.
Yeah, well, they get less and less, obviously. I think I have actually saved some residual checks that have been for like 15 cents or like 9 cents. I did voice ADR work for the movie Willow.
Nice.
Yeah, so that was additional dialogue stuff. I happen to get a check here. I just got it a couple days ago. Disney Worldwide Services, $3.82.
It's so I mean, come on, Disney, you can't round up to 4.
No, it is very specific about is for the international rental, electronic sell-through, video DVD, free TV, and pay TV. Actually, I get the most money from the international or the internet rental It's not international, internet rental. So anyway,
So are
yeah,
those are they lifetime? Like if there's like a resurgence in Howard the Duck sales is 10 years from now, is that it's like does that ever expire as far as
I don't think so. I don't know much about it, but I think from what I understand, as long as a movie or television show is out there and part of a package, then the people involved get their residual checks.
That's really cool. It makes you think like when you see actors that have like 150 credits going back to like 19th, like that got to add up. You get a little retirement out of that.
Oh sure, yeah, you're getting 100 residual checks every few months. Yeah, that's sweet. Yeah.
You went into quite a bit in the production, but is there a particular memory that stands out to you as a favorite memory from the production?
Well, I think my favorite part was falling backwards with the human in the Howard costume. And I'm only like that because it was so weird. Nobody got hurt. He didn't get hurt. I didn't get hurt. And it was just so strange. Like as I'm falling backwards, I remember thinking, as I said, save the duck. And I hope I don't get hurt. And it all worked out well. So that was part of it, because it was just such a weird thing to do, was be involved in this thing with this guy in a duck suit.
It was funny. We were when you said you could see his eyes through the mouth, like it was just serendipitous that we could actually picture that in our heads. We were talking to Miles Chapin, who was credited as the duck coach. And he had showed us a picture of the open mouth on Howard, and you could see like the human mouth on the inside, and it just was creepy. So I know I could totally picture what you're saying, like as you're going down, to be able to see inside the mouth and see these wild eyes, like please don't drop me.
I mean, he was obvious. I mean, because he is like seeing himself coming towards the floor. So he's obviously nervous. I mean, I could have just chucked him, I mean, there's any number of things that could have happened to the poor guy. So anyway, worked out well. So,
and you were, so being a fan of the comics before the film, or would you be interested in seeing them give it another shot with like the resurgence in MCU properties and things like that, and maybe having a place in the MCU?
Yeah, I would. But I, now that, CGI has advanced so much, obviously do CGI, make him look more like the comic book character, and really, get some writers in there who really study and it's been a while since I've read the Howard the Duck books, but, get somebody there who really understands what the writer was going for, that he's, he's observant, he's confused, he's completely out of his element. He wants to get back home. But somehow he's thrust to all these adventures. I mean, I remember one of them was, Hell Cow, the vampire cow that he had to deal with. So focus more on, really, getting his character and what he's going through, and give him an edge, because he was an edgy character. But yeah, I would love to. And as I said, now that CGI has advanced, like he could, do it, he could be so much part of everything. And I think the other Marvel characters would have a great time with him.
Yeah, I could dedefinitely see it. And I think I think he deserves it. The comic book deserves it. But and studios now are so much, I don't know if they are more courageous in doing this, or if they just have the ability to make those kind of risks now with like streaming platforms and things like that. But I've noticed that they're a lot more, they've gotten a lot better at honoring the source material when they like turn a comic book into a film. They're not afraid to, like, it seemed like before the suits would get in the way and be like, we need to sell toys.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and now it's like, no, we're gonna the fans of this character, this is what they love. This is what we're giving them when we translate it to film. Like Dark Knight and things like that.
Yeah.
And so yeah.
Well, I think you hit on the key, which is streaming. So, they can almost do a test run of it with streaming. They could, put the money into streaming. If it hits, they make it a series, they make a bigger movie out of it. I think that's where you said that where they're allowing more creative control to writers and directors, because an audience will be found, and it does not have to be a vast audience. And if you're lucky, then you get a big hit, and then you get, because as William Goldman will tell you, in his book, The Screenwriter, he said, nobody in Hollywood knows anything, and of course the stories of movies that people said, executive says this isn't going to work. Star Wars is, that's a classic. I mean, it got turned down by 19 studios before, somebody went, sure, why not? Especially since Lucas is not going to take his director's fee. What the hell? We'll throw it out there, so, I think now it really is, they are allowing, let's bring in this person and have them do it and see what happens. And if it doesn't work, well, okay, we haven't lost the whole barn on it. So, yeah.
And Marvel's just going nuts now.
Well,
like every intellectual property they have, it's like you're getting a show, you're getting a movie,
right.
You're getting. I mean, it's incredible to see.
It really is. Yeah, it's amazing. So, and I think I don't know if this is true so much. They're starting to give the character. They're starting to give the superheroes actual characters that you actually care about, as opposed to they have superpowers. Like, I think The Dark Knight is one of the great movies, genre, not even specific. I mean, there is so much going on there. Every time, it's one of those movies that when it's on TV, even though I have the DVD, like if it comes on TV, I'm like, oh, I'll watch this part, and and so, I think that's gonna, I haven't seen the new, and the people are putting humor into it, like the new Suicide Squad, which I haven't seen yet, which I'm actually looking forward to. So, but I think, like you said, the streaming, I think, is a part of it, because they just need to have content, and to have that much content, they're just going to let people be a bit more creative. No, this has been great. I love the idea that Howard the Duck is achieving this odd cult status. I think it's deserved, because it's was a very strange experience. As people can see, I think people can feel the strange vibe in the movie, that there's clearly something odd going on there. I think people had fun, in spite of sort of the tensions. I think most people had fun. Most of the people I worked with had fun. But also, thanks for asking me to talk about this. It was great fun. It was a real pleasure talking to the two of you. And this was great.